and Alda has given us the pleasure of joining us in conversation. Some of the rotten and good times of which you are speaking come to us with Never Have Your Dog Stuffed, and more recently, things I overheard while talking to myself. I had the sense that after a lifetime of doing this and this and this and this and this, and boy, have you had a good time, that your joy in being a grandfather is something that you could share with the rest of us in using that skill you've lusted after since you were 8 years old, that you could tell us about it in books.
Yeah, I did want to be a writer since I was 8, and I think as a boy I was always interested. As a teenager, I became very interested in figuring out a life that was good to live, sort of what the Greeks called the good life. Although it could mean any one of a number of things.
It does.
The good life. The good life is usually portrayed in advertising as a bikini-clad woman strolling on the beach.
For those of us who aren't and don't, could we proceed to have another definition?
Well, I always wonder what happens after that picture is taken. I
can tell you.
Because usually there's a guy lifting a woman out of the water like this, right? And then I'm thinking, so then what happens? What do they talk about? I mean, I feel really glad to have really fun things to talk about in between lifting my wife out of the water.
Well, there's always, the second act, the third act, the fourth act. What comes next? And that part of that's a matter of maturity, the willingness to think beyond the immediate. I mean, on the one hand, we're saying pay attention, but at the same time, there's the next step and the next step and the next step.
As much as the pay attention caught my attention, as it were, I think that I want to see it twinned with the spontaneity.
Well, it is. It is. I mean, I don't think you can have one without the other. I think you're more spontaneous if you're paying attention. In fact, as an actor, and it's funny that as I was writing this second book, Things I Overheard, I was really struck by what I read in Marcus Aurelius about the present moment. But it only occurred to me a little later that that's how I had been trained all my life, to pay attention to the present moment. And that connects with what you're saying about spontaneity, because if you're acting in a scene with another person and you're not totally present and seeing them really taking in all their involuntary muscle movements and the tone of their voice, all of the things that are not mechanical but very subtle and are very difficult to interpret, unless you're paying full attention to that, you'll answer whatever they say in a way that you had decided to do earlier at home. When in fact, what you're getting is what they're really saying, and that's what needs to be answered. And if you're paying attention, you don't have to try too hard to answer it in an appropriate way. In fact, the harder you try, probably the less appropriate it'll be. But that's what spontaneity is to be there and let come in what's coming in. It's not spontaneous to saying, now I'll do this crazy thing, and now I'll do that. That's not that. Some people, I've seen actors do that in place of being spontaneous. And I guess it feels spontaneous because it's something different. But that's not the essence of spontaneity, just being different, I don't think. I think it's really having being in touch with life, to be lively in a gentle, definite, clear way, not to hit the other person over the head with your bombast. That's mania. That's not spontaneity.
Or reckless.
Those things you're describing for actors would seem to be appropriate for those of us who have conversations. I mean,
or who get up in the morning.
Well, it's the conversations we have with our friends, with our colleagues, but it's also the public conversations we have. If we stop listening, bad things happen. To hear that coming back from an actor, because I think as most people assume you've got lines, you read your lines, and you come back time and time again how dependent everybody is on one another.
It's a group experience, acting, and when it isn't, I think it's a little more boring. And I think that we're very social animals, and we really respond to the social connection. And when we see two people truly engaged with one another, it's a very intimate experience we're watching, and it's hard not to look at it because we're programmed to read one another's thoughts, to try to see where we stand with one another. A lot of scientists think that's how we got to be human, because we got very good at that, and that allowed us to cooperate better, and it allowed communities and culture to form. That's at least the ideas that a whole group of scientists hold. But as far as just conversation in real life, which you started to talk about, a few years ago it occurred to me that if I would listen to another person in life, now I'm not talking about on the stage, just in life, if I would listen to another person as though they were possibly my salvation, not that I had to wait until they were done so I could say this great thing I had to say, but really let them land on me and change me. Unless I let them change me, unless I were willing to let them change me, I wasn't really listening. So that I, as much as I can remember to do that now, I try to let the other person in and see what they're really trying to tell me. And it's not always what their words are telling me.
That's right.
You know, I mean, sometimes I don't agree with the words, but I understand what they sort of mean, and I can join them on that, and it makes for an actual conversation.
Yeah, there are people that say that the words are only about 20% of the meaning that gets moved back and forth.
Right.
We have a friend who is one of the world's great instrumentalists. He happens to be a cellist. And when I have asked him over the years, what's the magic formula? Well, 30 years ago, he was saying balance, purity, and simplicity. And then he came back about 15 years ago and he said, it's still balance, purity, and simplicity, but we have to add another one. So we've got a firm base here, and that is discipline. And as you say, as much as I can stay in that, trying to be open, discipline really is.
Well, you know, all the good things that we know about being alive are not necessarily the easiest things to do. You know, don't lie.
But there's a nuisance. How inconvenient.
Are you sure?
I mean, I try not to lie, but you know, when somebody says, "Are you busy Friday night?" and it's better to say, "I'm busy," than "I don't want to spend Friday night with you."
I'm not, but
is there an option?
Plan B?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because we've over the years been very selective in the people we've talked with, people that are, you know, have achieved things in their various disciplines, and countless times they have stopped. We have had people stop and say, "I haven't thought of that," and come back, and that's a tribute to their ongoing engagement. There's continuing willingness to learn, and their assumption that people that, you know, don't have their skills, don't have their expertise, don't have their standing, whatever, that there's still the possibility that there's knowledge, wisdom, experience, something to be gained from having that conversation and learning from other people.
Yeah, there really is. That's what, you know, we're sort of all we have. It's really funny that Jean-Paul Sartre wrote that play, No Exit, where he said, hell is other people.
Right.
That's real hell, because, I mean, when they want to punish you the hardest, they put you in solitary confinement, and you go crazy.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
And hell is no other people.
That's right.
Purgatory is most people.
Friday night. We're going to be back in just a moment with Al and Alda. Be with the three of us when we return.